Welcome to this podcast. Is making me thirsty, the number one destination for Seinfeld fans. This is episode 111. Today's guest is a researcher and writer at Sports Info Solutions. He has over 20 years experience in sports media as a writer, broadcaster, and researcher. He's the author of The Yankees Index, Every Number Tells a Story. He worked at ESPN as a researcher and writer for nearly 16 years, including as a lead researcher for Baseball Tonight for 6 years. And of course, he's a big Seinfeld fan. Please welcome Mark Simon. Mark, thanks for joining.
Thank you for having me. I'm very much looking forward to this.
All right, Mark. So take us back. Stuyvesant High School, 1989. That's when Seinfeld launched. When did you become a Seinfeld fan? Was it live during those high school years or a little bit later?
So I was trying to trace the origin story a couple of hours ago, actually, and I think what I concluded was that it had to be around the time of The Boyfriend, which is like, 35 episodes in. I believe that's episode 35. The reason that I say that is that my father's very into the JFK assassination. So that's very much right up his alley. I had seen the movie JFK as a high school student, and I had done something on it for a high school class. And my family has always been into great comedic writing. Like Taxi was always very highly valued in our house. All in the Family was always very highly valued in our house. Cheers was always very highly valued in our house. So it makes me think that around that time, especially with Keith Hernandez having been in the episode, I was 16. My family was super hardcore Met fans. I would say it's highly likely that that's right around when it happened, that's when I caught the bug and caught it big.
Interesting. So that was 91 was the JFK, and I think that's where a lot of fandom took off, was that Hernandez episode. We have it in our top 10 for sure. So you said you were a Met fan. So interesting. So let's fast forward a little bit. Obviously, the big interview you got with the man himself, Jerry Seinfeld. How did that come about? And was it in person? Was it over the phone? Give us a little history on how you connected with Jerry.
Sure. So I think it's 2014. And just to go back a little bit, I was working at ESPN at the time on Baseball Tonight, and I was writing a little bit for ESPN.com. And at the time, ESPN.com branched out and started these local sites, ESPN New York, ESPN Chicago, ESPN Los Angeles. And I was very friendly with the ESPN New York editing team, just as I was with most of the .com people because of my role there. And I can remember one day looking at my Twitter feed and noticing that I had a new follower, Jessica Seinfeld. And I was like, what? This doesn't make any sense. And I'm pretty outgoing on Twitter. I'm not afraid that especially having back then the power of those 4 letters, ESPN, to my name, I wasn't afraid to say, okay. And I DM'd her and I said, basically, what's the deal? And she explained it that she was looking for people to follow that could help her better relate to her boys and to Jerry. And when it came to baseball, she was a baseball fan. And she followed at the same time, I think it was me, Ken Rosenthal, and I want to say that it was the Met beat writer for MLB.com, Anthony DiComo, that we were like her 3. And then a couple of weeks later, I was in one of what we call the green room at ESPN with the on-air talent for Baseball Tonight getting ready for a show. And Steve Berthiaume, who's now play-by-play for the Arizona Diamondbacks, he used to be one of the hosts. He says, Simon, I don't know if you know this yet. Jerry's following you on Twitter. What? And sure enough, that was true. And I was like, I have to validate this in some way. I've got to verify it, whatever. And he too had followed a couple of extra baseball people in this little time period, and it kind of became clear what had happened there. And again, going back to the idea that you're at ESPN, take advantage of it. I said, let me see if I can get him, because if I can get him, I can do a baseball interview with him. And I had read a baseball interview once with Charles Schultz that was wonderful. And I was like, I want to do the same kind of thing with Jerry. So I DM'd Jessica again. I said, look, I'm not asking to go through you here. Can you just tell me the name of his publicist? And she wrote back and she gave me the name. And it was Tom Keeney. And I wrote Tom Keeney, and I don't think I heard anything for a little while. Then I went to the Society for Baseball Research National Convention in Houston. And I get a phone call on my cell. Mark, this is Tom Keeney. Jerry was available, and he'd like to talk to you tomorrow. I'm in Houston. I don't have a cassette recorder with me. I don't have any sort of technology with me. Is there any way we can do this at another time? And he says, why are you in Houston? I said, I'm in a National Baseball Research Convention. And he says, oh, Jerry will love that. That's a great excuse. And I was like, great, there we go. And from there, we were able to make the connection, and I got him back when I was living in Connecticut. I got him on the phone, and it was wonderful. And I can give you more details on that as we.
Yeah. So how does that work? You get through on the phone call and take us through talking to Jerry, because you know everyone knows Jerry likes baseball, but then it's always like, is he just doing that because he has connections and he can get on, get in the booth with Keith and Gary and the guys, or does he really like baseball? And after reading your piece of them, he definitely really likes baseball. I mean, it goes back to the time he was a kid, but maybe you can kind of take us through what that was like, talking to him about
sure. So I get on the phone with his PR person. They're like, here he is. And I'm like shaking. And I'm like, all right, we're going to get through this here. And the first thing I said to him, well, he says hello. And the first thing I said to him was, why are you following me on Twitter? And he says, I have to tell you, why wouldn't I follow you? I love the stuff. Did you just tweet a Felix Hernandez heat map the other day? Love that. And I'm like, heat maps? Jerry likes heat maps. This is good. And from there, I relaxed. And from there, it was a pretty pleasant and normal conversation. And the other thing that I remember was that at one point, I said to him something like, I was afraid to bring up the show. And I was like, I apologize for bringing up the show, but, and whatever the question was. And he stopped. He says, why are you apologizing for bringing up the show? Bring up the show.
Right.
And so we had, like a 20-minute conversation, and it's still findable. If you search my name on ESPN.com, I can certainly tweet it out. The gist of it was that Jerry thinks about baseball every single day. He's very into the minutia of baseball. We got into a discussion of whether Jose Reyes could beat Mookie Wilson in a race from home plate to third base. We talked about being at Game 6 of the 1986 World Series, which is, of course, part of Met lore, part of Seinfeld lore, certainly.
Right.
And we talked about all that stuff, and he was terrific. And we subsequently had a few Twitter interactions that are kind of cool. The most notable of which was probably when I brought up Chipper Jones and whether he thought the Mets should honor Chipper Jones. And he said, absolutely. He says, he was a great player. I think it's cool. I don't think you hate the other side. And I thought that was kind of a neat perspective.
Interesting. Yeah, I think he has that joke, right? You root for laundry in the end of the day.
Yep.
You're basically just rooting for laundry. But that's great, man. You mentioned the Big Four, right? ESPN, the Big Four letters, and you were there for quite a while. We've talked to a few notable sports media personalities, and we had Mike Flory on last week, and we asked him, who else is he, behind the scenes, like you said, that green room you're talking about, right? Bristol, mothership headquarters. We got to assume there's a lot of Seinfeld fans. What is that like at a place like ESPN? Maybe some notable names or not notable names that you're talking to, over those 16 years that are banting around Seinfeld references, trying to get Seinfeld references on air, things like that. Maybe you could share some anecdotes there as well.
Sure, and I'll go both with the known commodities and the lesser known things, and start with the lesser known. We like the
minutia too.
Yeah. Okay. So I worked for the Stats and Information Group, and the Stats and Information Group is a group of really, I guess, really smart, very creative, very clever, very often funny sports fans, super fans. And these are all people that tend to have super fan personalities for other things that they might encounter. One of which is Seinfeld. So in the early part of my time there, which is early 2000s, there were many instances in which lines were referenced and things were integrated into shows. One of my colleagues Jason McCallum reminded me of one when I was talking to today about this. And he said the best one that he ever came up with was when Garrett Cole got traded from the Pirates to the Astros, the graphic title about the trade was, "I don't want to be a Pirate."
Mute. That's a good
So
one.
that's one. From a more well-known perspective, I mentioned Steve Berthume. Adnan Virk is another who you can see on MLB Network and Le Batard and a number of things. But my favorite is probably Rhys Davis. Rhys Davis and I have had an inside joke now that has probably lasted 20 years. And I know this because I recently interacted with him and it came up, that the way that things work at ESPN when you're working with an anchor who's on the air live is, it used to be that you wrote notes on index cards. This is in lesser technology days. You didn't necessarily have an iPad in front of you. And in doing so, for one baseball game, I wrote out Tex versus Tor. And he looks at the card and he says, "What the hell is Tor?" And knowing what he liked and didn't like, I said, "Tor, like Ekman." And he laughed. And he totally got it. And we have had that now as a running joke. Anytime I would see him when he started to work in college football, I had him speak to our company. It came up in the conversation for that. Ekman, isn't he doing time? Was a frequently brought up line. The other things that I like, I know Serenity Now has been brought up. The Ken Phelps Jay Buhner trade always gets brought up.
Yeah,
Anytime you talk lopsided trades. For me, with Festivus gets brought up. I like Festivus. I do a thing on Festivus where I will tweet out the feat of strength, which for me is a 98-yard punt in an NFL game, because it's literally a feat of strength. So we would do silly things like that. The one that I wanted to do that I never was able to execute, I used to cover a minor league hockey team for a newspaper in Trenton, New Jersey. And I asked them at one point if they could get the clip of Babu doing this, "You very, very bad," anytime someone committed a penalty. And they never made it happen. And I just thought that would have been a really cool kind of thing to do to tie in pop culture, sports.
Well, you got the Jerry connection. You probably make that happen now, right?
The minor league team is long gone.
Yeah.
But
So I imagine all these jokes went over Peter Gammon's head. I'm just curious if he was
I don't know that we ever tried them with him. Carl Ravitch was more of a fan of the TV show The Practice. Like, we would feed him like things from that. If you remember that, the TV drama with Dylan McDermott. Reese, Steve Berthume were more Seinfeld-ish kind of people when I worked on the show.
So you're an analytics guy, right? You look at things like by the numbers, and in some way we're trying to analyze the seasons and where we rank episodes, and like it's ever changing, right? Like, give us a little sense of kind of where he's pulling out the pen and paper. Do you have I don't know, let's say a top 5 rank formula?
If you have a spreadsheet of some sort of equation where you can share your screen, you can show us how you
I haven't gotten that far. I would say that 2002 Mark Simon would have done that. I don't know that 2022 Mark Simon's doing that, but I did go through the episode list. I'm in the middle of a rewatch now. Once I started corresponding with you, I started a rewatch. I'm on season 3 right now. But I think I've got my top 12 here. And in trying to come up with a 5, I think...
Keep 12. All 12. We'll take it.
Go all 12? Okay, then these are in no particular order. I'll read them off. And I know you're going to like it because you guys are the Seinfeld purists who like seasons 1 through 5. And that's like...
Yeah, we're real fans. Yeah.
Yeah, so the Limo... And the Limo, if I'm not mistaken, came right after the Boyfriend. So the Limo is very strong. Peter Krause in that. We love Sports Night in my family, so that one's particularly fun. The parking space, the parking garage, rather, I relate to because I've essentially had that happen. Although I've never peed in a parking garage.
You don't suffer from uromycetosis?
I have spent hours walking around parking lots.
We like those 2. Those are good 2 to start.
Okay, Red Dot. I like the Red Dot, which I just saw.
So you've mentioned our number 2 and number 3 so far. So you're in a top 5.
The Marine Biologist. I think that that's probably my favorite just because of the ending. I think that that's one of the best written things that I have ever seen on television, the way that that episode ends. The sea was angry that day, my friends, all that. The boyfriend, which I mentioned. Then going to some of the later stuff, and I'll come back to the earlier stuff in a second. The Betrayal. I love The Betrayal. I love the idea of doing the episode in reverse. When I saw it the first time, I was looking for all the Easter eggs with the lollipop that got bigger. I just thought that was really creative. And again, I know you guys aren't necessarily real fans. First 5 seasons.
I mean,
really liked that episode.
The thing about The Betrayal too is they weren't the first to do it. You know, I mean, that's the part that I didn't know when I watched it live. But
true. And neither did I.
Based on it's based on that play or whatever. But I mean, it's still, it's everyone's got their own taste. It you know what it is? It goes with the Chinese restaurant theme of like different, no one's ever done it before type thing.
Yes.
So I can see that. Yeah.
Well, I'm coming back to I'll go back to the Chinese restaurant. Every Mother's Day we went for dim sum in Chinatown in New York City. And that episode felt so real to me. And just a tidbit, my most memorable Chinese restaurant was Mother's Day 1985. My dad puts on his Walkman and all of a sudden starts jumping up and down in the middle of the restaurant with all these people who had no idea what was going on. The Knicks had just gotten Patrick Ewing in the draft lottery.
Wow.
So that's one that I really like. And then I've got, Mike Florio be damned. I really like the finale for a good number of reasons, one of which I'll get into in a second, but I really, really like the finale. I thought the idea of doing it as a trial was perfect, and the reason I say that is because I wrote a fanfic script, and I had a trial in my version of the finale too, and I was like, oh, this is a match, this is terrific. And it was the concept of my fan fiction was George goes on trial, Jerry and Elaine get married but not to each other. And I felt like that was a possible direction that they could go. And when I watched the way that they resolved everything, and I know I don't necessarily like how they got to the trial, but I love the trial aspect of it. I love the scenes that we didn't see in the trial with I know that Keith Hernandez may have had a bit part, and
Steinbrenner
other
too,
people
right?
may have been there.
Or was the finale they brought Steinbrenner back for? I think they brought Steinbrenner.
Right, like
Steinbrenner,
all those things. I love the idea of that. And I thought that they got the finale right. Sorry, Mike Florio. Strongly disagree with you on that.
Those are all fair points. I mean, the finale's it's not as terrible. I mean, it's polarizing, that's for sure.
Yes,
but
totally. We did a big party for it. I had muffin tubs. I had Yoo-Hoo. I had Pez. We tossed a rye around. Like we went all out.
So, like a 98 you had a live party with all that stuff?
Absolutely. Not a lot of people. Man. It was like 4 or 5 people, but we took it really seriously.
I think too, the Larry David, because we've talked to a lot of these guest stars, and the theme is always the loyalty that Larry David has. And I feel like the finale was sort of a nod for him to say, hey, let's bring everyone back, have a big party, like, how can I bring everyone back? And that's how I look at it. I mean, he may have not thought that at all, but I think for some way back in his head, he might have thought that. So I like that.
Well, I love that they brought people back for the rap party. Like, like one episode, it's like, all right, you come back at the end of the year and you get to go to the rap party, which I didn't know until I started listening to the interviews on your show. I love Bizarre Jerry. Again, I like the taking something and just kind of, what's the best way to put it? I just like the creativity behind Bizarre Jerry.
Yeah. What about the chicken roaster then? The old switcheroo with Jerry and Kramer. That's always a fan favorite.
So yes, that's not in my top 12. I respect that episode. I almost put it in, but I decided I left it out because there were others that I liked ahead of it. The Soup Nazi. That was very real New York to me. Like, as someone that's lived in the city, I had never been to Al Yuginna's place, but it just felt very, very real. The rye is just hysterical. The Junior Mint, going back to an earlier episode, I think when I made this list, I cycled back. The Junior Mint, I think we probably did at some point on ESPN in a highlight with Ken Griffey Jr. that at some point we must have said it's a junior mint, like off a home run or something
Right,
like
right.
that. The Secret Code, but like I my my secret codes are little known things, like basically like that, like people just generally wouldn't know about me. So I like that. And then I wrote a few others latter years where I liked a concept, if not the whole episode, if I can indulge in that. Van Buren Boys, Muffin Tops, Pothole, Merv Griffin, Serenity Now. Thorough.
Wow.
You cover the gamut.
Well, that felt like more than 12, but
Right. Yeah. You cover the gamut.
It felt like we were going along good. And then, wow. I mean, I would say you're 75% season 7 through 9 versus the early years.
No. Those last 5, as I said,
those were like honorable mentions. Yeah.
Oh,
I got
you. You liked a couple of concepts.
That I did deliberately because I wanted to kind of stick you with some latter years.
You wanted
stuff.
to get under your skin a little, Howard. That's all. You wanted to get under your skin a little bit.
Yeah.
It was contentious when we talked about those first 16 episodes we reviewed. You know, I'm a big fan of the rye. I'll stand by the rye to season 7, but I love the rye. I mean, you got the Cassandra's having dinner, who's having sex with the chicken. I mean, you can't beat it. I mean, I get your point on the concept of the show is better than the show itself, sort of thing, which makes sense.
Listen, I'll go to my deathbed saying the show should have ended after season 5. Maybe throw in Jimmy and Hot Tub, a couple other ones, but it was just a different show. And I think, like Florio mentioned Florio, like we didn't hate 7, 8, 9. Like we wanted to see it out, and there was nothing else on. Like we still loved the characters. Mm-hmm. But the characters were different, Mark. I mean, George wasn't George, right? Like,
right. It's a little more outrageous.
A little more, yeah. I mean, Limo George, nervous, deceptive versus like Pothole George. I don't even know what he's doing.
But George.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just a different show. But what's incredible is whether it's you or whoever, like people love. Doesn't matter whether it's the first 5 seasons or the last 4. Mm-hmm. There's such interest. I think that's the beauty of the show.
Let me say this too, that in particular, and there's another podcast that does this similar to yours, but there's yours as well. There's yours, and that's what I'm bringing. The idea.
Whoa. Nobody. This is the number 1 destination for Seinfeld.
Let's have that understood, please.
I'm on yours. I'll give you that. I misspoke there. The thing that I really like about yours is when you talk to the people, the secondary, the bit players, they're so grateful for it for the most part, and those that are not, it's still like really ingrained in their heads what it was like. And every single person loves Jason, loves Michael, like it loves Julia. It's amazing how great that is. And I've always been drawn to the secondary player. My favorite Met of all time is a mediocre closer named Neil Allen from the late 70s, early 80s, who was traded for Keith Hernandez. So I like that you had Toby on. I was like, that interview was riveting for me. I love that. And I just wanted to make sure that was said, that I really appreciate the interviews that you're doing. George's boss, we slipped the Mickey. That guy was great too. Like,
yeah, he really was.
But I think, you brought it up. I think that's the beauty of the show is that, and believe me, we're looking for something, but like, it is like, everyone loves everyone there, right? It was just a well-run machine. It was small, close-knit, and that starts at the top with Larry and Jerry for sure. And you spoke to Jerry. You know what the kind of guy he is. So, we appreciate that. Well, it's funny. I thought Jerry was he started following you because you were DMing with his wife. Maybe I thought you.
No, not quite. I'll throw one other thing too. I talked to Kenny Kramer, and I talked to Kenny Kramer. Now it's 25 years ago. I talked to him when he started the Kramer reality tour, like literally within weeks of that going. He was He
Yeah,
was
we had
a
him on.
character.
We had him on.
I'm sure he's the same now as he was then. But it was just so funny to talk to him. And I took the tour. I love the tour, and
nice.
it was fantastic. That was back. That had to have been like 96, 97 because we had him on our morning show in the college that I went to, and he was great.
Yeah, we also had Larry Hankin on, the other creamer, if you will, right? And
Wow.
he was definitely a character. He was great too. But yeah, I mean that was great to hear your top episodes and the reasons behind it. Now obviously your connection to baseball, you just went over it, and how when you talk to Jerry, he loves the minutia. And to me, there's probably three scenes that are baseball related that kind of sum it up for me. It's the subway conversation with Jerry and the Naked Guy. That's just, I mean, that's sports talk radio. That's why the Fan work. That's why Mike and the Mad Dog work. We know how many pitching. We got pitching, no hitting, back and forth. That and the what the hell did Jay Buna for? When I talked about this all the time, when I heard that live on TV, my head just exploded. I couldn't believe this was being talked about on a television show, because the Buhner trade is my whole childhood. And I forgot the third one. There is a third one. Oh, the third one is the first episode.
Yes,
Mets
that's
game,
my number one.
It, right? Like those three things are like the sum of. Yeah, I was going to ask you sort of like, we know you wrote those two articles on both the Mets and Yankees references, but for those, for our listeners, maybe you can give us your sort of, how baseball is tied into Seinfeld so well, and what are some of your favorites?
Oh boy. So I would say that the number one was the one that you just brought up, the one from the pilot. Don't tell me what happened in the Met game. I'm taping it before Winning picks up the phone. Right. I love that, and I love the idea of essentially that was it's the ultimate don't spoil it for me kind of moment. Joe DiMaggio and Dinky Donuts I really liked. That one's pretty funny. The Yankee Clipper, like Cheryl Miller's brother played basketball.
Yes. Howard wore that one out on Twitter during March Madness.
I really like that one. That was a great reference. Other than that, obviously the boyfriend episode would be one. Let's see what else. I'm trying to think of what else.
You like the minutia. I'm guessing you probably like Joe Pepitone built Central Park.
Yes, at Central Park.
You probably like the fantasy camp, Moose Scourin and naming those kind of guys.
Yes, with the fight.
Yeah, I mean those are classics.
I think I want to say
Luis Polonia. Howard loves the Luis Polonia line with the uniforms.
Yeah, Wade Boggs, Cotton Breathes.
O'Neill promising the home run.
Yeah,
a couple of weeks. Stay tuned. We got a special guest if you like that episode.
Ooh, very nice.
And it's not Paul O'Neill, but
well, spoiler alert. You guys, he's got a book coming out.
We're talking to Curry. We're trying to talk to Curry here.
There you go. Cool. Very good.
I mean, baseball is just so much of the essence of the show. Obviously, because Larry and Jerry just love the sport. But yeah, it's certainly Keith Hernandez. I'm trying to think of some others. But I love the one where Elaine sits in the owner's box with the Orioles hat. That's another great one.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's kind of like a tease before the sort of Steinbrenner ever comes, and clearly the whole Steinbrenner thing is great. In my mind, that certainly helped the later years, was the character of Steinbrenner. What are your thoughts on Big George in those in all those episodes?
I always got a kick out of that. I've never been a Yankees fan. So that to me was always like kind of okay. The how could you trade Jay Buhner for Ken Phelps is classic, and him trying to justify it is pretty funny. My scouts all said Ken Phelps, that sort of thing. There are very few bad moments in the show. I would say I like just about everything related to baseball that's been in the show, and the Steinbrenner stuff is very, very solid, and it does. I know, again, going back to the idea of maybe the later years not being as good. It's clever, it's creative. The one where he gets traded to the Astros,
Sons
George.
of bitches. Yeah. I mean, that's hot. Is that the hot tub, right? Isn't it? Or am I missing out? Yeah, it's the hot tub. Sons of bitches. Yeah, I love the hot tub. That's a season 7. I mean, that's a classic season 7. The hot tub. Jean Paul, you bastards, you sons of bitches. Yeah. You know, it's funny. You know, you kind of just we just kind of touched on it a lot right there, but we didn't get I got the sense that you're leaning more towards the seasons 2 through 5, but you know, to put you on the spot, do you have a favorite season as far as that goes?
So it would be interesting to try and create a formula to figure out what the best season is. There was a sweet spot for me in kind of, I think it's latter part of 2, early, and then into 3, which is the part that I'm essentially doing the rewatch of, that kind of starts around the parking garage, and really with I guess the statue being an episode.
Did you watch our conversation with Ray Thomas with the statue?
Yes. Yeah. In fact, that one and the Toby one are I think my 2 favorites. But if you take that like block from like that point and go down like the next 15 to 20 episodes, that's probably about as strong of a 15 to 20 episode block as you're going to get.
You know what? I think we got to do this, Mark. We got to figure out a formula. Well,
hang on. Let's look it up.
Well, here's what we've been doing is we rank each season, right? But here's the thing, and I kind of throw analytics out the window. Like if we did that and ranked them all the time, I think the way our numbers shake out, it's season 5. You could possibly argue that, but you know, I don't know. Sometimes you just go with your gut. It
depends. You say how many had more in the top 25 versus the top 50, and then in the top 5, like season 3, we have a lot of in the top 10 from season 3, but probably more of the top, 50 lands 5. It's touch and go between 5 and 3.
What I'm saying is, like, yes, you could do those numbers, but sometimes you got to go with your gut. It's like, you got to pull the picture. You know what I'm saying, Mark? Like Tori used to.
Yeah. So but doing it either way, whether it be writing it out and doing a formula or doing the gut thing, you're taking the same kind of, and this is the discussion I have with anyone when we talk analytics of anything. You're essentially doing the same thing. You're just maybe not putting it on paper. And like, if you were trying to create like what makes the ultimate Seinfeld episode or set of seasons, like for me, for any TV show that I watch or movie or whatever, the writing is generally number 1 for me. And then you kind of get into, the story. Yeah, but
to O'Hara's point, though, then the deal would be like number 1, right? Because it's so well written with Jerry and Elaine, But like, I don't know. I'm taking the pen probably over the deal, right? Because seeing it live, if you're saying gut, you're putting them against each other. I'm picking the pen. I'm picking the jacket. I'm picking, there's reasons why you're going to bump one up.
So you're saying there's intangibles?
Yes, exactly.
Well,
It can't just be writing, right? I mean, Kramer's not even in the pen, so that should be the tangible. All 4 aren't in it, right? But who cares? Right. I don't know.
Well, listen, Florio brought it up. His favorite is probably the boyfriend, because he remembers watching with his dad. There's little intangibles you can't write down.
I think that's fair. And everyone's list is personal, just like a baseball Hall of Fame ballot is personal, right?
Yeah.
You can't
that's why, analytics, Mark. I know you're an analytics guy, but I don't know. I'm not a big analytics guy.
So
what do you put in the Seinfeld Hall of Fame episode-wise?
So hang on, I want to answer. I want to get to it. I'm an analytics guy and I'm a story guy, kind of like at the same time. I'm like an everything's kind of squeezed together kind of person, where I understand where to draw the line with one, and I understand where to integrate one. And that's how I operate when I try and deal with sports statistics with anybody. My Seinfeld Hall of Fame, like if we were going to do like a Rushmore, I think Marine Biologist would be on my Rushmore. Parking Garage would probably be on my Rushmore. Boyfriend would probably be on my Rushmore, and then I would want to have one of the later ones in it so that it wasn't a 4 dominating from the earlier era. So it would probably be like The Betrayal, which again maybe isn't going to get the taste of everybody, but for me, because of the writing aspect and because of the in the moment gut reaction when I watched it, and I was like, I remember being like, "What was that?" kind of thing, and I think that has a certain value that I would.
Listen, I can't knock it. Listen, I talked to Yankee fans who put Jeter and Mariano on the Mount Rushmore, and they kick off DiMaggio and Gehrig. Like,
right.
Come on, you know what I mean? So
I put Mattingly above both of them.
exactly.
Nice.
But he's a hell of a guy. That's my favorite. That's one of my favorite Seinfeld moments. George coming in all excited with let's play
two.
No, so yeah, I hear you. I mean, that's why I think Seinfeld rankings are so difficult. And we've talked about it just tonight. Like it's ever changing. Like Marine Biologist, we don't have it in our top 5, but we re-rank it tomorrow. I think America. I always said this. I think America thinks Marine Biologist is the number one.
We have it 6, by the way. It's not our top 5. It's 6, but it could easily be 1. Yeah.
Right. There's no shame in it being 6.
Yeah, but to Howard's point, he thinks, and I think he convinced me. He thinks America would vote at number 1 when next. I think it might be the contest. Contest is probably up there. If it's not Marine Biologist, it's probably contest. I would think with America, only because it sticks with everyone so much. But it's interesting because contest is in season 4. Mm-hmm. And everyone thinks of season 4 as the arc, and season 4 it got some heavy hitters in it. I mean, Chief of Letters, Opera, Bubble Boy, Contest. I mean, you're talking some heavy hitters in season 4. I can go on about it, but I mean that's why 3, 4, 5 is a tough call. I mean, I don't know. To each their own, but if you come at me with season 8's the best season, I
would never do that.
Right. I know you wouldn't do that. I know you wouldn't do that, but I'm just talking generally speaking. We're seeing a lot more season 8 fans online than I would have thought before we got into this racket. I was not expecting that, but
well, again, that's people who were born after the show came out. Like people who saw it live, yeah, Mark's going to throw in a season 8 here and there, but for the most part, like, we get it. It's 2 through 5, 6, are the key seasons. But yeah, I think younger people get into it in a different way, and they start with like the Soup Nazi and Muffin Tops and that stuff, and they think that's Seinfeld, and then they watch the older ones and go, oh, that's not George, I don't know. I think you have to watch things smarter,
I think there's an intangible of in the moment of having watched it, those early ones, especially the contest, where you're like, did that really just happen? Did I really just see that? And then you wind up conversing about, like, if Twitter was around for the contest, like Twitter would have gone insane. Like, right. I always say that Twitter was around for Tyson Douglas. Twitter would have gone off the rails. It's the same kind of thing.
Right, and it's interesting tying
another 91 reference, Mark.
I was 16 then. That's like a prime year.
Yeah, it's interesting to tie it back into O'Hara's put Jeter above Mantle in the Parthenon of they didn't even see Mantle, so they're definitely not putting him up there. Let alone seeing it later, like you're talking about season 8. Like that's even a bigger disconnect. It's like, if you were born late, you just don't even think, oh, well, Mantle was good, but I never saw him play. It's like season 3 was good, but I didn't watch it live. Interesting parallel there. I don't know where I was going with that, but it is an interesting parallel. 91, huh? So when you were in high school, when you were watching it live, were you as big of a fan, or did that become later? And did you have like a group of friends because me and O'Hara, we talked about it earlier. I mean, we would go to biology class in 9th grade. All we do is talk about Seinfeld. Like the teacher it was just, hey, Golter, we're talking about Seinfeld today. We don't care about the molecular biology, whatever anyway, did you have that same sort of, water cooler talk or whatever you want to call it, gym class talk back then?
In high school in New York City, the group of people that I hung out with were obsessed with fantasy sports. So we talked about that.
Yeah, the journal. You had the newspaper out? Did you have the newspaper out? Yeah, so
we were doing our stats. Like literally handwriting our stats. I think for me, it really took off college. And then the people that I watched the finale with were college friends. And I know that I saw and I know that there was a build up to that over a period of time where I wrote fanfic and, just had fun with it. And we had Kenny Kramer on our college radio station and stuff like that. So I think it really picked up for me probably in college.
Well, it's funny you called it fantasy in 91. I think it was called rotisserie baseball.
Yes,
rotisserie
baseball. We were into rotisserie basketball with Cheryl Miller's little brother and certain other players.
I'll never forget. Quick story before I get to the next question. I remember I lost the championship because the New York Times box score had an RBI for Barry Bonds, but the Journal News did not. It's such controversy. But anyway.
Did you have Bonds and Griffey in the same outfield, O'Hara, one year?
Yes, just like Costanza wanted.
Yeah, exactly.
So, Mark, we talked about the shows and this, and I know you're a big Peanuts guy. It's interesting. Yes. We spoke with Chuck Klosterman, great author, and we mentioned that George Costanza, in our mind, is probably the greatest character. And it's weird. He resonates with a 12-year-old me as he does a 40-year-old me, right? And he brought the parallels of Charlie Brown, has that kind of similar grasp on children and adults. But, you know, of the four, who's your guy or girl?
Boy, that's really hard. I think I prefer the guest stars.
But that was going to be my follow-up. Who's your favorite guest star?
Like, if I have to, well, my favorite guest star is going to be Keith Hernandez, just because that's how it's going to be. If I had to pick from the four, I think my favorite is Jerry, just probably because of the one-liners and the great like analogies and all the things related to stand-up. And I'm very into, like, now we're going to see Birbiglia and John Mulaney and Nate Bargatze and all these stand-up comedians now. And I'm so much like listening for the jokes and the story. And he's, even though he couldn't act, or, you know, said that he couldn't act, I think Jerry would be my my number one. I think I like them all pretty much equally. Guest stars who I really liked, I love the line, "The card says moops." So I guess the George Bubble Boy interaction.
Wow. The Bubble Boy himself?
Yeah. I like that, even though it's a very brief part. I like Jackie Childs. I remember when I was doing the fanfic, I liked writing for Jackie Childs. Who else? I don't know that if I had
Danny Tartable. Danny Tartable.
I liked Toby. I thought Toby was very clever. I liked one that I didn't bring up, or maybe I brought it up briefly, the Pothole with Kristen Davis as Jenna. She gets 2 appearances in the show, which is a unheard of thing for one of the girlfriends on the show. And I can relate to the moment because I've dropped important things in the toilet and it sucks. So that, I guess that could be one. Yeah, I think that's I love the line, "I will always be a winner and you will always be a loser. That's why I'm here and you're there." And I think that relates very well to the 1990s to 2020s Braves versus the 1990s to 2020s Mets. And I've used that with people before. I particularly like that line.
Yeah, it's Fred Applegate. We had him on as well.
Exactly. He was great. He was great.
He was great. Yes. I enjoyed his. Yeah, he was great. Yeah, I mean,
spoken like a true Mets fan right there, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, you just kind of rattled off a few. I don't know if you took any down or remember any, but what are some of your favorite lines? Like, we went through seasons and episodes. You know, what kind of lines? What lines stick out? I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of Costanza in there.
So I know we did this on Baseball Tonight or Sports Center or something. I used to have a blog where I wrote about Mets history. And I did it from the perspective of games that they won, for those that don't follow baseball necessarily, games that they won in the bottom of the last inning, the walk-offs. And there's a line in the show, when you hit the high note, you just walk off. And that's Jerry in one of the later episodes, and I don't remember which one it is. But I actually was looking on Twitter to see if I'd used that anywhere, and I had a couple of times. That I really like that line as someone who likes walk-offs. The sea was angry that day, my friends. Yeah. The moment of the golf ball reveal is probably my favorite moment for any TV show that I've probably ever watched. I just love that. I think that it was perfect. And Cartwright is certainly great. Yeah, I think those are a few that I really like.
Those are good. Those are classic. Are you so it's been what, 8 years since you talked to Jerry? Has there been any communication since between you and him, or you and the wife? Like,
So he went off Twitter, and he's still on Twitter, and he still follows like the same set of people, and I presume he's checking it every so often. Jessica unfollowed me. I think maybe there was too much baseball for her.
She learned all she needed to learn. You're a good teacher.
Yes.
She was like,
So
that's all I
she
got.
essentially graduated from my baseball school. He and I had interactions over time that were just like me asking him about Chipper Jones, me asking him about Michael Kadire, me asking him about Curtis Granderson. And then there was one time where on his website, he had himself double booked in 2 different cities on the same date. And I just alerted him to that. And within 5 minutes, I got back, thank you very much for that. We'll fix it.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Yeah, it's funny. It's funny that he, taking it back to Dinky Donuts, Joe DiMaggio dunks the way he hit. It sounds like Jerry does stand up the way he likes baseball. He's very into the minutiae. He talks about dissecting jokes and things like that. So it only lends itself that he's going to be into statistics, and someone like you is right up his alley. I mean, he knows his alleys, right? I mean, you're doing, I mean, no one knows more stats than you, I'm guessing, as far as that goes.
Well, isn't I know my alleys a line?
Yeah, that's why. Yeah, that's why I threw it in there. I know my alleys. You got to believe the Galapagos Islands with the turtles. Came in with the squeaks and the squeals, but no, it's funny. I don't know if you said this before we started or after we started, but you had mentioned that you literally invent statistics right now as part of your. I caught that and had to ask a question about that. Like, sure. Are you seriously just literally just trying to come up with new ways of coming up with a stat that's meaningful?
So I wish that it was me. I work for a company that does that. The company I work for is called Sports Info Solutions. We're based in Eastern Pennsylvania, and we've been in business for about 20 years. The guy that owns us, or that owns a chunk of us, used to own the company Stats Inc., which we hear credited on broadcasts all the time. And they invented, before I got there, they invented a statistic to evaluate defensive performance of Major League Baseball players that teams were using, and that kind of served as a foundational thing for being able to figure out, okay, is this guy really good, or does he just kind of look good? It's called defensive runs saved. And we've taken that business. We deal with in the neighborhood of 20 to probably 2/3 to 3/4 of the major league teams. We have an NBA business. We have an NFL business. And the people that I work with that are a lot smarter than me when it comes to that invent the stats. Like we look at things that are going on in the different sports and we say, like, what can we do? For football, we've created a stat that we call total points, which allows you to compare, if you wanted to compare offensive linemen, you could compare offensive linemen using that stat. If you wanted to compare defensive linemen beyond the idea of, oh, this guy got a sack. Okay, what else do you got? You got to have other things too.
It's kind of like hockey. If he was on the field when a point was scored or something like that.
Yeah. Okay. So that's like a plus minus kind of aspect to it. But like if you pressured the quarterback and put him in a more difficult position to make a pass, that's not necessarily being credited by anyone other than like, oh, Troy Aikman says it on a podcast for 2 seconds and then it's forgotten. So we go pretty deep into things that you can watch on video. One cool thing, just that maybe your audience would like, that I like, and that I think Jerry liked, because I found a tweet where I think I brought it up to him. We watch baseball games and we put plays into categories. We have 30 categories of what we call good fielding plays, and then we have 60 categories of what we call misplays. So if someone robs a home run, that's a good fielding play. If someone makes a diving catch on a ball hit in the gap, that's a good fielding play. If someone slips and falls, that's a defensive misplay. And we have all these different categories, and they contribute in their own little way to a player's overall defensive value. So we're fully enmeshed in the sports analytics space.
Inside baseball, literally, huh?
Yep.
Well, I love Bernie in the 90s, but boy, he didn't deserve any Gold Gloves. I'm sorry.
There you go. And see, now you're a gut guy. You're a gut guy, and that's what the metrics say too. So you and the metrics are very much in line together there.
I'll be damned if you're going to talk bad about Bernie on this podcast, I'll
love Bernie, but he was no Gerald out there. Let's be honest.
R.I.P.
But anyway, Mark, this has been a treat, man. We appreciate the time. Listen, you send this when we get it live. You send this to Jerry in the DM. All right.
You got it.
Thank you. This was great. Really appreciate it, man.
Sure.
Thanks, Mark.
You got it. Thank you. That was great. I
Thank you, man.
appreciate that. I appreciate that you asked me to do this. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, well,
You're the
thank you
man.
for reaching
Have a
out.
great
You
day.
know, I mean, we appreciate you listening and keeping it going for us.
Cool. See you guys.